We're starting with the flour. This recipe makes 6 bagels. That's about the most you can make in a smaller home mixer. This is a very tough dough and it will overheat the mixer. You're also going to have to use a high gluten flour, minimum 14%. We used Sir Lancelot or All Trumps. If you don't have one of those, you'll have to add Vital wheat gluten to your bread flour. And then you'll add sea salt or kosher salt, the purest form of salt. Now the critical secret ingredient is malt, without which the taste and texture won't be that of a bagel. Then we add the yeast. This is surprisingly like a pizza dough and takes very little yeast. And now a tasteless, pure vegetable oil. And lastly, add the water. And when you add the water, add it at room temperature. Don't heat the water. Then give everything a rough mix, just enough so that you don't see dry flour at the bottom of the bowl. There, that's mixed up enough. We can go ahead and put it on the mixer with the dough hook. And we're only going to mix it for about 2 minutes. Just enough to make sure all the ingredients in the dough are thoroughly mixed together. Then we're going to stop it and we're going to let it sit for 10 minutes while the yeast begins to activate. After 10 minutes, you can resume mixing for another 15 minutes. You'll see the dough looks much more elastic already. Keep an eye on it because it's a very tough dough and the mixer will wobble and could even wobble right off your counter. As the dough gets close to done, you'll see it holding onto the dough hook and slapping against the sides of the bowl. You should be mixing on a slow or medium-slow speed. When it starts to look very smooth, almost like bubble gum, it's time to stop the mixer and test if it stretches like bubble gum. And if it does, it's ready. This is a good time to get a feel for this dough. So knead it a few times, ball it, stretch it, and get a feel for the moisture and consistency of this dough so you know what you're aiming for next time. Roll the dough into a ball, and you can use your mixer bowl, inverted, to cover it, and leave it rest for 15 minutes. Get a total weight. You should have 540 grams, which would make 6 bagels at 90 grams each. Regardless of what weight you got, weigh and divide your dough into 6 equal pieces. Roll each one into a cigar shape. Then you're going to go back and roll each one out, turning your left hand palm up and fully wrapping it around that left hand. Then turn your palms back down, roll the overlap part a couple times to seal it, and then using 3 fingers on the inside, go back and forth and seal it really well on the ends. Again, roll them all out into the cigar shape first, and then go back and start with the first one. Take a small wooden cutting board and sprinkle it with a little bit of cornmeal or semolina flour so the bagels won't stick. Then you go ahead and roll out the rest of your cigars into bagels and place them on the cutting board. I'm quite out of practice these days, but 300 bagels an hour used to be the standard. Here's another closer look at that rolling technique. We've eliminated the mass production over-yeasting, protein reduction, and dough conditioning for machines to handle the dough that change the flavor and texture. Cover them with plastic wrap, a plastic bag, or a damp towel, and put them in the refrigerator. They need to stay in the refrigerator from 6 to 12 hours, or even overnight, a slow cold ferment the way many pizza doughs are. These were often called water bagels because they're boiled in a big pot of water. These days, to save time, manufactured bagels are steamed in a steam oven. Home model steam ovens even advertise how wonderfully chewy they make your crust, but a bagel crust is not supposed to be chewy. The outside of the bagel should be crunchy, like a wafer-thin pretzel, while the inside is light and fluffy, and yet still chewy, filled with holes of various sizes to be filled with whatever delightful spread is on the bagel. When chewed, the crust should crumble and mix with the dough inside, and yet not combine with that dough. You should still be able to feel the texture of the crunchy pieces of crust in the soft chewiness of the crumb. A steam oven can give you a nice uniform bubblegum chew. Okay, have the big pot of water boiling with 1 tablespoon of baking soda for every gallon of water, and a little bit of dark brown sugar or molasses for color. Very gently slide your bagels right off the wooden board into the water. Spread them out and don't overcrowd them. Don't put too many in. Boil them from 30 seconds to 1 minute on each side. The longer you boil them, the thicker the crust will be. The bagel board you see next to the pot is actually a piece of 4-inch wide by 1/2-inch thick wood, cut short enough to fit into the oven. It's wrapped with burlap that's stapled to the wood and been soaked in water. Using bagel boards is optional to eliminate flat bottoms. It doesn't change the bagel at all. So if you don't mind flat bottoms, simply remove the bagels from the water to the baking pan instead of to the bagel boards. If you're using bagel boards, put the boards with the bagels into the oven along with an empty baking pan for 4 minutes. Then flip the boards over, dumping the bagels onto the pan to finish cooking the bottom sides. If you're not using bagel boards, put the baking pan with the bagels into the oven and flip the bagels over individually for the last 2 minutes. And be sure to let the bagels cool for at least a half an hour before cutting.